All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So, look, in this one, I really wanted to talk about the future of head coach Jim Harbaugh, right? Currently still at Michigan. But when you take a step back and you look at the courtship or the alliance between Harbaugh and the Wolverines, it's safe to say that it's the writing's on the wall, right? It's definitely in question, especially looking at Harbaugh's contract ending after 2021. I mean, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's just unrealistic. It's not feasible to really picture both parties remaining together for the foreseeable future. So it begs the question, if Harbaugh and Michigan decide to part ways, right, go their separate ways, could Jim Harbaugh wind up becoming the next head coach of the New York Jets? This team desperately needs some answers. They desperately need a guy to come in and just take charge of this franchise. They haven't had that for a year and a half now. They've been a complete disgrace ever since the moment that they hired Adam Gase. So really how I kind of wanted to organize this video, or really how I wanted to attack it, was asking two basic questions up front. Number one, what do we know about Jim Harbaugh? And then number two, what do we think about him, right? So this is me speaking almost from an anecdotal point of view here. But when I look at Jim Harbaugh, this is a guy who has a massive reputation for walking into football programs, for walking into an NFL franchise. Doesn't really matter where Harbaugh goes. He's going to really create a sense of the world's against his football team. It's almost like he revels in the fact he loves being the underdog. He likes kind of making enemies down the line. Think of a Pete Carroll back when he was at Stanford, when Carroll was at USC. Think, when he gets to the NFL level with Jim Schwartz, and even Pete Carroll, the rivalry with Pete Carroll continued on to the NFL. He almost likes, again, creating enemies and kind of being the bad guy, being the villain, and having the odds stacked up against him. That's where I feel like Harbaugh's really at his finest. I think he likes program building. I think he's an absolute beast at rebuilding, taking a team that could be in complete shambles, a team that's, in just searching for answers, searching the world for answers, complete disarray, and saying, you know what, this is my team. I'm going to put my stamp on the team. We're going to play with aggression. Nobody's going to like us. People are going to be mad at us, and we don't care. We're going to go out there and take what's ours. So I think he does a really nice job of getting players to buy into what he's preaching, especially younger players. I mean, just think back to Stanford, right? He goes to Stanford, he inherits a 1-11 football program by the time Harbaugh leaves. And let me just remind you, Stanford is not one of these schools that consistently gets, they're not a football powerhouse. They're not getting 5-star, 4-star guys on a consistent basis all the time. Stanford is not Texas. Stanford is not LSU, Florida, Alabama, USC for that matter. They're not. But Harbaugh goes into this, again, a program that's searching and searching and searching for answers to get relevant. He does that to a T, and he takes on teams like USC. He upsets everybody, and he really just grabbed the Stanford program and just said, you know what, the world's going to be against us, but we're doing this thing, so hop on the ride and let's go. And what did we see? We saw a 1-11 football program turn into a 12-1 football team by the time Harbaugh left. Goes to the NFL, inherits, I believe, a 6-win 49ers team, instantly goes to the playoffs, instantly goes 13-3, walks into a veteran locker room and just completely changes the culture instantly. And then, all of a sudden Colin Kaepernick pops onto the scene as well. So Harbaugh's known for walking into bad situations and quickly flipping a switch, quickly getting players to buy in, and quickly, again, having that ability to really just be the underdog and kind of shift gears into the role of, you know what, everybody's counting us out. We're going to go and shock the world each and every week. So that's what you're getting with Harbaugh. So there is actually a downside, okay, and it kind of haunts Harbaugh wherever he goes, and it's a common denominator. You've seen it. You saw it at San Francisco. You're seeing it now at Michigan. There's this constant inability to get over the hump, right? To grasp that championship trophy and say, we are the champions. It's just not there. Yeah, he could take a horrible football program, make them relevant, get them back to the playoffs, get players buying in and playing hard, playing aggressive, but it's just taking that final last step. It's almost like beating the boss, beating the last level of the video game. He could get you there, but can he get you that last little bit? when the challenge, when the entire spotlight is on that game, the biggest game of them all, can he get it done? And so far, he has not shown that ability, right? You look back when he was with San Francisco, Seattle was always waiting. Seattle, Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson, even though at that time it wasn't Russell Wilson's team, it was the defense, it was Marshawn Lynch. Those Seattle Seahawks teams always had the edge. It was always like San Francisco they just couldn't break through that wall. Now we're seeing it at Michigan. Oh yeah, we're dominating Northwestern, we're dominating Illinois, we're beating Rutgers, but it's the teams like Ohio State, and it doesn't matter if it's Urban Meyer or Ryan Day having trouble against Michigan State, having trouble against Penn State. It's like, yeah, Harbaugh's a really good coach, and he's done a really good job at Michigan. I don't like this narrative that's being pushed that Jim Harbaugh's some horrible coach, and he's by far the most overrated in college football. I mean, he has multiple 10-win seasons at Michigan. Michigan, before Harbaugh got there, was a mess with Brady Hoke. Yeah, they haven't captured a Big Ten championship, and I totally get that argument, that point of view, because of the rosters that Michigan is bringing in and the recruits that are constantly flooding the Michigan campus, along with what Harbaugh is being paid. He's almost being paid like a Nick Saban, a Dabo Swinney, a coach of that caliber, but the results just aren't there. They're kind of in that second tier each and every year. So, of course, I think it's time for Michigan and Harbaugh I think it's best if they go their separate ways, but I think as we stand right now, Harbaugh is he still has something left to bring, right? So really, I wanted to shift gears and really ask this question as well. Why isn't it working? Right? Why isn't it working at Michigan? You would think that a guy on a really high salary, a guy who's been to a Super Bowl, he's won his division, he's won conference championships at the highest level possible, the NFL. How isn't this guy winning the Big Ten? That should be cake for him at Michigan with a ton of great recruits, and you're still not getting it done. Well, I think the offensive system has something to do with it. I think in a spread, predominantly spread high school offenses all across the country, when you take guys like that and you kind of slam them into pro-style systems that are more complex, systems that are harder to learn, harder to get a feel for. Harbaugh's system specifically is based off of a lot of timing, rhythm, and whatnot. It's like a West Coast under center 8-step drop back style of system. We saw a ton of that with Shea Patterson. It's just kind of, I don't want to say an inability to adapt, but it's just like, I feel like his system right now in the year 2020 is just not working. I feel like college kids are more fit, or the Michigan roster is more fit for a traditional spread wide open system. Just kind of taking a page out of Ryan Day's book, where it's, hey, you know what, we have 5 stars, 4 stars all over the place. Let's just go out, let them be athletes, right? Let's just have everything simplified and let them go out and just make plays by themselves, and let me get out of the spotlight and do my own thing, kind of work behind the scenes. Whereas with Jim Harbaugh, it's kind of like, I want to be in the spotlight, and this is my football team, and we're going to run the pro style system that's worked in Stanford, that's worked in San Francisco. But it's weird because you take a look back at the 49ers, they brought back the pistol formations and whatnot out of nowhere, and they kind of popped onto the scene with Colin Kaepernick again. So it's weird. It's a weird kind of like an ego thing at Michigan. I just don't really know, but I don't think it's a coincidence that this thing has kind of followed him wherever he's been, where he just can't get over the hump. He can't be the Super Bowl champs. He can't win the Big Ten. He can't beat Ohio State. And a couple of those games came down to questionable calls. But I digress. So really, let me just pose this to you. Would you guys like Jim Harbaugh as head coach of the New York Jets? I'll say this. If it happens, if Harbaugh becomes the next Jets guy, I'm going to like the hire a lot. I think that the Jets need a leader. I think the Jets need somebody to really come in and say, you know what, this is a young football team, but we're tired of being bullied by the Patriots. We're tired of being bullied by the Buffalo Bills. And as far as this year goes, bullied by every single team, every single week. So I think Harbaugh would come in with a sense of energy, a sense of enthusiasm, a breath of fresh air, if you will, and really pump a lot of life into a young team that's filled with rookies. So again, I would really like it. I know from like a system standpoint, it might not really work out. There's a lot of people that don't like Harbaugh out there, and understandably so. They just, it's just the Michigan thing. How can you fill at Michigan? You've been a disappointment. He's a complete failure. And I mean, I get all those arguments, but at the end of the day, I think when you take a step back and you look at things from a macro perspective, when you look at San Diego, when you look at Stanford, when you look at San Francisco, and when you even look at Michigan a little bit, I still think Harbaugh is a good coach. Now, I will pose this question in there as well before I end the video here. Has Jim Harbaugh lost his intensity? Because this is not the same sociopath that, freaks out on the sidelines, throwing his hat, throwing his play sheet, chucking his jacket all around, screaming, falling on the turf. He doesn't really have that, that crazy side of him anymore. Maybe it's just him getting older and he's kind of mellowing out here, but he definitely is not the sociopath that we once knew. And for me personally, that, I once loved as well. Cause, I definitely, I thought it was cool when Harbaugh would just freak out on the sidelines, cause, normal NFL head coaches they never do that. So anyway, has Harbaugh lost his intensity? I don't know. I guess we'll never really know, but I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And as always, go Jets.